And the First Lady is now publicly calling for the United Nations to open up a special investigative tribunal to investigate the assassination of her husband, basically saying that if foreign investigators don't take the lead, an outsized role in this investigation, she fears justice will never actually be served. Brianna?
All right, Matt Rivers, thank you for bringing us that interview. New Day continues right now. Welcome to our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I am Brianna Keeler alongside John Berman, and it is Tuesday, August 3rd. And we have some good breaking news from Tokyo. Simone Biles fighting through mental health challenges to capture the bronze medal on the balance beam, closing out her roller coaster Olympic experience on a high note.
I'm going with she won the bronze.
Yes.
Because Biles' performance really was a kind of victory for her and for the millions of people who suffer from mental health issues. In a moment, we're going to discuss what Biles accomplished this morning with Olympic gold medalist and three-time Olympian Dominique Dawes. First, though, let's go right to Tokyo, bring in Coy Wire, who was in the room where it happened. Oh, what a morning, Coy. This was really, really dramatic.
John, you're a big Tom Brady fan, and this was like him pulling out in the first half of the game, saying he didn't feel well mentally, and he says, you know what, fourth quarter, game on, I got my mentals right, as Simone Biles called it, and the world was waiting to see what was happening. Inside that Ariake Gymnastics arena here in Tokyo, the atmosphere was electric for the first time at any venue I had seen, Brianna and John, here in Tokyo. The media, though, became the crowd, became the atmosphere. They were standing on their feet, cheering, applauding, encouraging Simone Biles as she walked out into that arena. Will Ripley was there. He said he got tears in his eyes because he understood the magnitude of this moment. It was more than about just Simone Biles. This was about, as you mentioned, mental health, the issue of mental health and the future generations of athletes. And athlete or not, if you're going through struggles, Simone Biles is letting everyone know it's okay to not feel okay. And you can remove yourself from any situation that you don't feel comfortable being in that moment. And she walked out with faith. This is the ultimate story of finding strength through your struggles, of perseverance. Simone said that she felt like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders at times, said her mentals weren't right, but she took some time, protected her state of mind, and then got back out there on a 4-inch beam, with the world watching, and took a leap of faith, and she nailed it. The crowd erupted. She told the media afterwards, John and Brianna, it's been a very long week, a very long 5 years. I didn't expect to medal today. I just wanted to go out and do it for me, and that's what I did. It definitely feels more special, this bronze, than the balance beam bronze at Rio. I will cherish it for a long time. She won 4 gold medals back in the Rio Games. She won that 1 bronze. It was also in the beam, not her strongest event. So it speaks even more about her finding the strength and courage to get back out there on that beam tonight. Bronze medal. 14.000 was her score. But as you mentioned, John, she won that medal before she even found out she'd won one. It was the moment she stepped up on that beam. She now has 7 Olympic medals overall. Brianna and John, it ties her with the great Shannon Miller for the most by any American gymnast. It's an incredible moment, not just for Simone Biles. She was aware before she competed, she was watching other gymnasts compete, and she would go over and encourage them and smile with them. She knew this moment wasn't just about her. I think that speaks volumes about her character. So it was an inspiring moment. The heart was racing while we were in there, and it was just a wonderful moment that's going to never be forgotten. It's going to help countless of future generations of athletes and beyond.
She made America proud for so many reasons, and not just walking on a balance beam, although walking on a balance beam isn't even the half of it. What she did on the balance beam, I can't even imagine. I pulled a muscle thinking about it. But Coy Wire, thank you so much for that. I should know we're going to speak live with Dominique Dawes to put this all in perspective coming up.
Yeah, that'll be a great interview. Also this morning, we are learning that 2 more police officers have died by suicide after defending the Capitol on January 6th. Officer Kyle DeFreitag joined the D.C. Metro Police Department in 2016. We've learned that he died on July 10th. Officer Gunther Hashida joined the department in 2003. He was assigned to the emergency response team with the Special Operations Division. He was found deceased at his home on July 29th. Officer Michael Fanone honoring Officer Hashida, who he knew well. In a statement overnight, he wrote, "Gunther was the most professional police officer that I have ever worked with in my entire career. I have always felt that way. For me, the takeaway is that so much more needs to be done to normalize the conversation around mental health, not just in our profession. We need to take away the stigma of talking about these issues. A total at this point of 4 officers, John, have died by suicide here in the weeks and months since the attack.
You know, and as Fanone mentioned, stigma. Remember, just last week, he and 3 fellow officers gave emotional testimony about their harrowing experience defending the Capitol on January 6th. It was met by ridicule and mocking from right-wing media.
I'm having a real hard time believing a lot of what I'm hearing because the video doesn't back up nearly all of it. One officer said he thought it was going to be the moment he died. Well, there were no guns at this place.
Watch Fanone cite the psychological trauma he endured as an excuse for ditching our Bill of Rights.
I've been left with the psychological trauma and the emotional anxiety of having survived such a horrific event.
The award for best use of an exaggeration in a supporting role, the winner is Aquilino Gonell. And for best performance in an action role, the winner is Michael Fanone.
All right, we're going to talk about how that denialism is affecting the dynamics here, but let's just focus on what we are seeing here. 4 deaths now by suicide of officers involved in January 6th. We're with Terrence Gaynor, CNN law enforcement analyst and former chief of the U.S. Capitol Police, and Paul Rieckhoff, who is an Army veteran and president of Righteous Media. He is also the founder of Iraq and Afghanistan Vets of America. Chief, to you first, this is, you were on CNN yesterday when we had learned of the 3rd death by suicide, and then it turns out that there was a 4th. I mean, it feels like these numbers are just ticking up, and I wonder how you're reacting to this.
Every suicide, every death is tragic, and I think this again weighs on the officers. So I know the Metropolitan Police Department family support officers are working very hard with our officers, and it's the same up at the United States Capitol. But this additional trauma that happens on the 6th, adding on to how tough it's been in the past year for America in general, but officers in very difficult situations. Both police departments, the Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, were struck by a lot of people off and sick because of COVID, then the large disorders, and then this particular January 6th. This weighs heavy on everybody. And I think each one of the chiefs and officers are concerned. And Brianna and John, everybody has an obligation to look out and be mindful of everybody else.
I think that's something that everyone needs to take to heart. And certainly I hope that officers are being vigilant of each other. I suspect that they are. Paul, we've talked a lot in the past about mental health when it comes to the military, and we're seeing some parallels here. This was really a battle that these officers were in on January 6th. What are you thinking as you are seeing this news that 4 officers have died by suicide?
I'm thinking it's time to get serious about mental health in America and to really change the conversation. America's had a Me Too moment and a reckoning. We've had a Black Lives Matter racial justice reckoning. It's time for a mental health reckoning. We've lost 4 heroes who were in combat, in my view. I've worked with combat veterans for almost 20 years, fighting suicide, dealing with PTSD. What they experienced was traumatic. It was stressful. And then to deal with isolation and ridicule and a lack of resources. In my view, they are combat veterans, and they're facing many parallels that combat veterans face. And maybe most of all, feeling disconnected, sometimes feeling hopeless, feeling like they're alone. And I want to send a message to them, and I hope you'll compound that they're not alone. There's help out there. And then reaching out for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. And it's happening the same time we're talking about Simone Biles. So I think there's an intersection here that's very powerful. Both can send a message that mental health support is necessary, resources are inadequate, and we need to change the entire national conversation and let people know that reaching out is strength. It's not weakness. You're not alone, and help is out there. But this has to be a full court press across the entire country and really around the world in dealing with a mental health challenge.
We know suicide, Paul, is very complex. And you can't know what happened to each officer that contributed to this. But you mentioned ridicule. And I wonder, do you think that the politicization of this event is something that exacerbates mental health for officers?
In my experience, yes. I mean, imagine a veteran coming home and being ridiculed in the same way after serving in Iraq or Afghanistan. There is no silver bullet in dealing with suicide. It's a complex series of factors, but we know that hope is key and that connection is key. And these people who are ridiculing survivors of an assault and a really traumatic experience, it's not just disgusting, it's dangerous, because not only does it compound the experience they're having, it also discourages other people from coming forward. Think about a young person who maybe is dealing with a trauma and sees this kind of ridicule and says, if I come forward, maybe I'm going to get ridiculed. So we need to blow up that entire misguided, dangerous part of this discussion in America and really focus on support, strength, understanding mental health, and continuing to pour resources in. Our Capitol Hill cops shouldn't be fighting for resources after this went down. We need to put the pedal down, get them everything we need, and really understand that they are heroes. And in many ways, contagion is real, clustering is real, and we need to think about how we talk about it and how we deal with it every single day.
We certainly do. Paul, thank you so much. Terrence, thank you for lending your voice here as well. And I do want to let our viewers know, because this is a serious issue we've been talking about. We know this can be triggering for many people. If you or anyone you know is struggling, please know there is help. Please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.
This morning, hospitals across the South are sounding the alarm, warning that they're running out of beds as the Delta variant spreads. In Alabama, hospitalizations have risen to the highest level in nearly 6 months. You can see on that graph right there. The state has the lowest vaccination rate in the country, which is 34.4% of the population fully vaccinated, which is well below the national average. But there are signs that demand for vaccinations there is accelerating in Alabama and a number of other states across the South.
Louisiana has seen a 302% increase in the average number of newly vaccinated per day. Mississippi, 250%. Alabama, 215%. And Arkansas, 206%. This increase in vaccination rates in states that have been lagging is a positive trend. Americans are seeing the risk and impact of being unvaccinated and responding with action. And that's what it's going to take to get us out of this pandemic.
Let's bring in Vanessa Davis, registered nurse and COVID nurse supervisor at the University of Alabama at Birmingham's injection clinics. Thanks so much for being with us. What are you seeing in terms of a change in numbers of people coming in for vaccinations?
Thank you, John, for having me. Yes, we are seeing over the last couple of weeks about an 80% increase in vaccination rates. We're seeing a lot more families coming in instead of the older population that we saw initially being vaccinated. So that's kind of encouraging. Parents are getting a little more concerned with their students going back to school soon, and they're going back to the workforce, whereas they've been in the past working from home over the last year or so.
What are you hearing from people in addition to that they might be concerned now about their children?
Children is the number one thing. With school starting back in 2 weeks, they're worried about the increased risk of exposure to the variant that's out, the Delta variant, and so they're concerned. And then, like I said, the parents are going back to the workforce, whereas they'd been working from home over the last year, and so they're getting increased exposure. And then we're also hearing a lot of patients come in that are wanting to get back to some sort of normalcy. They're wanting to travel again and be able to go out and feel safe without having to worry about getting sick while they're enjoying life.
So you say about an 80% increase. What's that in terms of numbers now?
So yesterday at UAB, we vaccinated about 200 patients. Probably 2 weeks ago, we were only doing 80 to 100 a day. Well, that's a significant increase.
That's a big increase. But just for some perspective here, back at the height, when you were vaccinating the most people you were each day, how many were you doing then?
We were doing about 3,000 a day during the height of vaccination.
So 200 a day is better than it was a few weeks ago, but nowhere near the height of it several months ago. So there is still some room to grow. Do you hear any stories from people who were saying, I was hesitant, but now as I'm seeing what's going on with the Delta variant, that hesitancy has gone away? Is there any sense of what is moving people beyond barriers?
There does seem to be this tipping point where they are finally a little more scared of the virus than they are the vaccine. And so they're seeking it out. Like I said, they want to get back to some sort of normalcy, but they're also seeing family and friends who are getting sick and hospitalized, and they're getting scared.
Understandably so. Well, Vanessa Davis, we appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for your daily efforts, and thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Coming up soon on New Day, the director of the National Institutes of Health joins us to answer your coronavirus questions. Plus, Broward County, Florida, now reversing its mask mandate in schools, complying with the governor's efforts. They were afraid of losing their school funding for asking people to mask.
And we have more on the breaking news. Simone Biles winning bronze in her return to the Olympics. We'll have Dominique Dawes live with us to react. New this morning, gymnast Simone Biles taking bronze in the women's balance beam competition. She had a very strong performance and she stuck her landing. So let's bring in Olympic gold medal gymnast and three-time Olympian Dominique Dawes to talk about this. She was the first Black American woman to win an individual Olympic medal in gymnastics. She is also the owner and founder of the Dominique Dawes Gymnastics and Ninja Academy with us from Maryland. Dominique, I mean, this was amazing to behold. This was an incredible moment. It is a bronze medal, and I don't know if there's been one so important in this Games.
Yeah, I do believe that Simone Biles is probably very satisfied with the end result. Of course, she wanted to get on top of the podium. She is a competitor, but facing her fears, getting that monkey off her back and stepping out and competing again and facing the twisties was something that people were very uncertain about. But I'm so pleased with her performance. I'm sure she is as well. And I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning and just sitting at the edge of my seat cheering her on.
Were you afraid? I was afraid watching her. I want to know what you, as an Olympic gymnast, felt. Were you afraid?
No, I wasn't afraid watching her because she wasn't going to put herself in a situation where she was going to possibly injure herself. If she didn't have the confidence and feel as if she was secure in doing the routine that her and her coach had set out for her to do, she wouldn't be out there on the podium. So I felt very satisfied. And even when she earned the bronze medal, it took me back to my 1996 Olympic Games when I came back after falling in the all-around to come back for my floor individual event finals. And I earned a bronze medal. And even to this day, my bronze means so much more to me because of the journey than my gold medal does as well. And I'm sure she feels the same way.
That's a really interesting perspective. She said after her performance that physically and mentally it was not safe for me to do it, meaning the other events, because I could not do the skills without jeopardizing my health and safety. The only reason why I could do beam was because there was no twisting. So thank God for that. There was no twisting. Dismount, we should mention, this was very much her moving along one axis. But for this moment, what does this mean for mental health and gymnastics and for mental health in sports in general?
Well, what Simone Biles has done, as well as Naomi Osaka and Michael Phelps, these top athletes have talked about mental health, and it's creating this national and global dialogue about it. And I think that's very important, and that's where it starts. And many people are going to feel more comfortable talking about any mental issues that they may have and recognizing that they are human. But I see it a little different with Simone Biles because she recognizes that she is very much a trailblazer in helping change the culture of the sport of gymnastics, which really does contribute to one's ill mental health in some cases. And right now, as you mentioned earlier, I'm standing in the Dominique Dawes Gymnastics and Ninja Academy here in Maryland, and it's a very healthy, compassionate, empowering, and encouraging gymnastics environment, something different that I came from. And I wanted this for my 4 kids and any young gymnasts that are interested in trying a healthier option in the sport.
Yeah, this is perhaps a culture change that she is helping shepherd through with. If anyone's been paying attention to USA Gymnastics lately, it is much needed, as you basically said there. Dominique Dawes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Look, I always wanted to know where I could get a degree in ninja. And it turns out I can go to the Dominique Dawes Ninja Academy.
I know a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old who really want to be ninjas. So maybe just head on up to Maryland.
Right after Hogwarts, I'm going to the Ninja Academy.
Cities and states are putting mask rules back on the table because we're seeing these COVID cases rising. Are vaccinated Americans paying the price for the millions of people who are not vaccinated?
And the two Republican governors digging in against any new restrictions. Are they putting politics ahead of public health?
The highly transmissible Delta variant, combined with the refusal of many Americans to get vaccinated, is driving another wave of coronavirus infections across the country. The CDC is recommending that even vaccinated people wear masks indoors in high-risk areas. But that reversal by the CDC is causing some to ask, why are the vaccinated being punished for the actions of the unvaccinated? Let's talk about this now with Michael Smerconish, our CNN political commentator and the host of CNN's Smerconish. You've been a prominent voice on this, Michael. You really have been, that people who are vaccinated shouldn't be paying the price.
Well, good morning. And you're right. I have. I mean, I fully recognize that masks prevent transmission, but vaccination is what prevents hospitalization and death. And I think that needs to continue to be the focus. And we've got these two pockets of individuals in the country, one who tend to be some stereotypical Republican version of white, evangelical, and rural, but another group, admittedly probably smaller based on polling data, that are more urban and young and often black. And they're refuseniks. You know, they're refusing to get vaccinated. And the question is, how do we reach them? And I've advocated for employer mandates, much like we have at CNN, much like we have at the law firm where I'm affiliated. I think that the president came up short, that he should have absolutely required all federal employees to absolutely be vaccinated as a condition of employment, including all members of the military and government at all levels. Governors, mayors need to do likewise and set the tone for the private sector, which says we've now all got to be vaccinated. It's the only way out.
I mean, right now they have an exception. Most of these places that are instituting vaccine requirements are creating an exception that you can test out of. If you want to take onerous weekly tests, you can get out of the vaccine requirements. Michael, you have these Republican governors. You have Greg Abbott, you have Ron DeSantis, who are not merely not going the way of requiring public employees to vaccinate. They are making it impossible for stores, for instance, to require vaccines for customers. You know, and then in Florida, tangentially, but not at all unrelated, DeSantis is telling schools you can't mandate masks in schools, and Broward County just crumbled and said, okay, we're not going to do it even though we want to because we're afraid of losing school funding. So what do you make of this?
So, you know, John, it's interesting because in that prior example where they're saying to the private sector, you can't, even the ship industry, which is such a critical part of that Florida infrastructure, the tourism industry, you can't go ahead and require that people be wearing masks. It seems antithetical to that private sector notion among Republicans that we're going to stay out of the way of business. The issue with regard to Broward County and the masks is really troublesome to me for this reason. We're a couple of months away, probably, from those under the age of 12 being able to get a vaccination. If the argument today is, well, it's a parental choice, and that's what Abbott says in Texas, and that's what DeSantis says in Florida, it's a parental choice as to whether children should have to wear a mask in a school setting. It's not something that should be mandated by the schools. Well, what are they going to say days, weeks from now when we all want kids under 12 to be vaccinated? Will that too be regarded as a parental choice? Because I can tell you, in order to begin school in those states, there are a certain number of vaccinations that students need to have. So are we going to say you don't need to be vaccinated in order to go to school when we reach a point that vaccination for those under 12 is appropriate? I'm really worried about that even more than the mask issue. This is just a sign of what's to come.
Let me give you a preview. Yes, of course, DeSantis and Abbott are going to block, any kind of local vaccine mandates for kids to go to school.
Well, I think that's outrageous. I mean, how can you distinguish that which is now ravaging the country from all those that are required? I think that hypocrisy is going to be a problem. Are they playing to their respective bases? Surely they are. It's the sort of issue that may guarantee someone nomination in a Republican primary, but doom them in a general election.
You mentioned, we're talking about Republicans here. We should also talk for sure about Democrats. As you mentioned, you think the Biden administration should do more. And then when we look at New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo has said when it comes to teachers, he wants them vaccinated, right? But they can also do the testing. And that is what the teachers union has seized on. At the same time, he wants private business to mandate the vaccine. So there's clearly a calculation going on here. How do you see politicians on the left making this calculation of not going as far as you think they should go?
Well, I'm an equal opportunity offender, at least I seek to be, and I look at those governors, those mayors, and the president as all being chief executives. You are employers. So that which you are asking of the private sector is something you need to lead on. And the resistance that they have to taking on the unions is something they've got to get over. Because I think that leadership now requires that large employers do exactly what our employer is doing.
Michael Smerconish, I happen to agree. You are generous in your offensiveness. I think that's what you were saying there.
Yes.
Thanks so much for being with us. It was great to talk to you. And I think you raise serious issues here. And I think people in some ways you were very early in this, saying, hey, look, you have to stick up for the vaccinated.
Right.
Michael, great to see you. Thank you so much. So what happens when there is an outbreak inside schools this month? That's going to happen. That's what doctors are saying. We'll have some new details on what will happen.
Plus, President Biden facing several headwinds, including a new record of unaccompanied children showing up at the border. Break. Health experts say cases in schools really are inevitable. Jacqueline Howard joins us now live from Atlanta with steps the school district should follow, Jacqueline, if and when that happens.
That's right, John. Most schools are scrambling to get their plans in place, especially with the Delta variant circulating. But most schools do seem to be following these steps that are recommended by the CDC. So if there is a COVID-19 case, they should isolate that case, trace the contacts, test the contacts, and quarantine those contacts who may have been exposed until their test results come in. Now, different school districts I've talked to, Denver Public Schools say they're working with local health officials to get their plans in place. Nashville Public Schools say they have school nurses on deck ready to identify cases. And then over in Seattle Public Schools, they have COVID-19 site supervisors on deck ready to address an outbreak. But as much as having these plans in place is important, John, health officials also say prevention is important. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky said masks are now more important than ever. Have a listen.
Everyone who is in a K through 12 school in the fall should be masked. Everyone across the country, adults, children, vaccinated or unvaccinated, everyone should be masked.
And along with masks, John, we're also hearing school officials, some are considering requiring vaccines for staff. A White House coordinator, COVID-19 coordinator, Jeff Zients, he said that this is becoming a growing trend.
Jacqueline Howard, understandable why. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
The White House under fire after a federal moratorium on evictions expired. What President Biden is doing with millions of renters now at risk of losing their homes.
Plus, new numbers show a troubling trend at the U.S.-Mexico border is far from over. We are going to break this down next. President Biden is facing headwinds right now, multiple. The COVID outbreak and the messaging around it. There's a blame game over the expiration of the eviction moratorium, liberal infighting over his spending plans, and we also just got word there is a new record of children flocking to the border. Let's talk about this now with CNN reporter Priscilla Alvarez and CNN White House correspondent John Harwood. Priscilla, first off, you know, it's been, with a lot of other headlines, easy to take your eye off of the border, but this is serious. Tell us what we're seeing with this new influx.
I mean, the Biden administration is still grappling with a growing number of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. We learned last night that in July, more than 19,000 unaccompanied children were encountered. That already surpasses the record in March, when we were talking about more than 18,000 and overcrowded border facilities. Now, what the court filing noted is that this is one slice of an overall figure. So in July, DHS is anticipating 210,000 arrests. Now, this does include repeat crossers, includes all migrants, families, single adults, and children. But it is remarkably high, especially in the summer months. This is a time of year where we usually see a decline because of the summer heat. So the Biden administration facing criticism here from the left, saying They need to ditch a Trump-era border policy that allows border authorities to turn away migrants, and from the right that says this is a crisis of their own making.
There's also the issue of how are they housing, right, these young migrants who are coming. They've come under a lot of criticism. Where does that stand? Have they improved facilities?
So recall in the spring, they opened up a lot of temporary facilities, and 5 of those remain open. And so the administration is in a better position to start to locate these children to facilities run by the Health and Human Services Department, which is charged with their care. So we're seeing less of the overcrowding of children at these facilities. But the filing said last night that generally speaking, across populations, the majority of their facilities are actually over capacity in their COVID capacity. So that is just very worrisome, according to this filing.
Yeah, what are we going to see going forward? And I wonder, this is the administration always tries to avoid talking about how big of a deal, what is happening at the border, what it really is. This isn't the only crisis they're facing right now, though, John.
Look, everything looks worse for the Biden administration when you have a resurgence of the virus. So the Delta virus has kind of changed the filter through which the country is looking at how the administration's doing. For much of the year, they've had the wind at their back in terms of making progress against the pandemic and economic recovery. And when the Supreme Court ruled in June that the eviction moratorium was going to lapse at the end of July, it looked as if that was going to happen in the context of much better times on the pandemic and economically. Now, all of a sudden, the Delta variant has changed that picture, created a sense of crisis, which it looked like it snuck up on the administration and Congress. It didn't really. They knew it was happening. It's just the context changed. And so there's increasing pressure from the left for the administration to act. And that happens right as they're trying to navigate this infrastructure debate where the left wants more spending than they can get through Congress right now. And so it's a huge governing challenge for the Biden administration to keep their coalition together, continue making progress.
What are they doing on evictions? Because this is at a critical time, as you mentioned, affecting so many Americans.
Well, as you know, the liberals in Congress want them just to unilaterally extend it and dare the Supreme Court to stop them. They said they can't do that, and that risks a bad precedent for future emergency action. So what Joe Biden has done, he said yesterday, he asked the CDC to see if they could find authority, couldn't find it. So he's asking state and local governments to use money that's already been allocated to relieve the stress on landlords and renters. He's asking landlords to go slower and seek that money before they evict people, and asking state and local courts to slow down this process. It's a very imperfect solution. There are a lot of people at risk, but it's the best the Biden administration thinks they could do. There is a lot of money out there, but again, it's sort of like these extended federal unemployment benefits, which are also due to expire. And that looks different now with the Delta variant. Biden was content to have that happen. Now you're going to get pressure to extend those. And some of the state governors who have not wanted to spend that money to relieve landlords and tenants who are under stress, he's trying to light a fire under them.
Yeah, because some of them will say no. So we'll see if they do comply with it.
Some of them are saying no.
We'll see if they comply with him. Harwood, Priscilla, thank you so much to both of you. Coming up, a new day special report on this new phase of the pandemic that we're in. We're going to talk about what you need to know about the Delta variant, the fast-changing rules on masks in schools and businesses, and whether a booster shot is on the horizon.
Our team of experts and doctors standing by to answer your questions when we come back.
The Civil War. We hit the road talking to both sides as the debate plays out across the country. Plus, reports that America's top general feared President Trump was planning a coup in his final days in office. And Jeff Bezos blasts off to the edge of space just 2 days away. Our Gio Benitez and astronaut Mike Massimino with a preview of the big launch.